Let's talk about China. Again, your expansion there is aggressive. What does the slowdown in economic growth in China mean to your plans?
Travel into China and travel among Chinese within China is growing at rates which are faster than the supply growth, which has been significant in that place, which is growing so quickly. The second way that it's really positive is about outbound Chinese travel. So we're seeing Chinese applications for visas to come to the United States, as an example, up almost 50% year to date.
What's the net effect for you on the idea that there's more outbound travel from China? Is the hope that they are familiar with the Marriott brand in China and as a result do that in the United States?
Well, I think there's both a selfish Marriott perspective, and it's exactly what you suggest. So the more familiar they are with our brand in China, the more likely they are to stay with us wherever else they go. A little less selfishly about Marriott as a whole, let's think about the U.S. perspective. The Chinese want to travel because they've got resources to travel. They want to see the world. Where do they want to go? They want to go, by and large, to the great destinations in Europe, and they want to go to the United States. These are places they want to see. And if the U.S. can play its cards right, there's a huge economic opportunity available for all of us by welcoming Chinese and travelers from grown economies across the globe to our shore. Make it easier for them to get visas, welcome them when they're here, welcome them in their own language when they check into our hotels. Those are the kinds of things we're talking about.
That's interesting that you say that. If the U.S. can play its cards right, I mean, the estimates are still for 100 million outbound Chinese travelers by 2020 on an annual basis. And you mentioned some of that. What are the biggest stumbling blocks are the visa situations, and when you say give them a good welcome, what do you mean by that?
Well, the visa situation, let's start with that. So we require under U.S. law an in-person interview to get a visa to come to the United States, always. Now, we have obviously visa waiver countries, but when you think about China and India and Brazil as an example, in every one of them, a local resident has got to go to one of our embassies or chancelleries and apply for a visa, sit down and be interviewed in person before they can hear whether or not they'll be allowed to come to the United States. So we can start by doing things like reducing that wait time for that visa interview, but much more boldly, if we can get visa waiver, interview waiver, in places like Brazil and China, the numbers will expand dramatically. But once they get the visa, then it's about coming through our customs and immigration process. How friendly is it? How long does it take? How much are they comforted when they show up at our shores? And then it's the creature comforts. So whenever we travel overseas, whenever people travel to the United States, they want to feel comfortable. And so often that's about language and food as being the primary things.
With Europe, why are you optimistic about it?
Well, Europe has actually been a fairly positive story this year. I've been worried about it for obvious reasons for the last 6 to 9 months, something like that. We started the year budgeting about 3% comp store sales growth in Europe, which felt to me a little bit aggressive. We're now through 2 quarters. We put 3% plus in the books for 2 quarters. Wow. And what that tells you beneath that big average is something that's quite interesting. Markets like London and Paris are doing very well. They're doing very well on the backs of global travel trends, not based on the European economy. And so when you get to markets which are much more dependent on Europe only, we see weaker results. Think of provincial UK, think probably even of Germany, where the economy is stronger than the rest of Europe, but benefits less from those global travel trends.
In the event that the euro begins to weaken, does that help you because of increased tourism trends to Europe as a destination, or does it weaken you because of the currency conversion?
Oh, there are pluses and minuses. On balance, we think foreign exchange movements are not terribly profound in their impact to us. The U.S. becomes more expensive, obviously, for Europeans wanting to travel to the United States. On the other hand, Europe becomes cheaper for Americans and other travelers from around the world to get to Europe. So you offset those things, and by and large, in any quarter, it could be a little bit off of total balance, but it's not too big a deal.